The film starts sooner rather than later in New York City with the hero Rachel having a relieving dream in which she sees herself pregnant. The world that they live in is vigorously impacted by computerized reasoning. In the following couple of scenes we see the degree to which innovation has blended in with the day-to-day lives of people. They have an individual simulated intelligence. Voice aid. Great morning, Rachel. Did you have a decent night rest? That effectively sets their everyday timetable, tracks their mindsets, and even recommends what garments to wear. I propose silver fossil for now. In the interim, fake nature units introduced inside homes have discredited the requirement for genuine time spent in nature. Anyway, Rachel's world is very not the same as her fantasy. She lacks the opportunity to go through the bothers of pregnancy, despite the fact that she and her better half Alvy are keen on becoming guardians. Alvy is a botanist, a calling which is near the very edge of termination because of all the mechanical progression meant in society. In the interim, Rachel is a dedicated and fruitful representative at a driving tech organization named Pegasus. She before long gets an advancement at the organization for her endeavors. During the advancement interview, the HR supervisor asks Rachel about her monetary circumstances. As her spouse is a botanist, she's the essential provider of her home. The HR supervisor then brings up that pregnancy at this point might crash her vocation and demonstrate to be financially sad. As an elective, Pegasus is able to store an upfront installment in the event that Rachel decides to have a child through an organization named Belly Center. Later in Rachel's office, her simulated intelligence partner plans a nature unit meeting for her during noon. However, she's interfered with by a call from the Belly place. They illuminate her that she has effectively endured the hang tight rundown for utilizing their progressive counterfeit Belly cases. They ask her to get back to them to get her spot and orchestrate a visit. When she gets back to they settle on a visit. The office is down the week. During noon, Rachel partakes in her nature unit meeting in a counterfeit tree where she fantasies about holding a child by the ocean side. Back from her midday break, Rachel tells her partner Alice that she got a spot at the Belly place. Pleased for her companion, Alice recommends they commend the news with a get together at her home. Yet Rachel uncovers that she hasn't even illuminated her spouse about being on the hang tight rundown for the counterfeit birth. After work, Rachel addresses her simulated intelligence specialist Ollie, who inquires as to why she never told Albie she was on the stand by list. Our hero says this is on the grounds that she's stressed over her spouse's response since he needs a regular birth anyway. Eliza then, at that point, guarantees her that her unit child will not be any less regular than one brought into the world inside a human uterus. We can see that Rachel isn't completely persuaded by her artificial intelligence advisor's answers. That night in their loft, Rachel is going to start the discussion with her significant other, yet he fills her in about his day and how his understudies were uneasy about cooperating with nature. At last, the understudies opened up to the experience. He then, at that point, adds that the world started to disentangle when enterprises started dealing with nature like a ware, which prompted individuals being genuinely unfulfilled. Hearing this, the spouse chooses to keep the report about the Belly focus confidential until further notice. Soon thereafter, Rachel goes to the visit without anyone else, where the clients watch a video of the Pegasus organizer. He tends to the declining birth rate in first world nations and credits it to pregnancy being awkward for ladies. He then, at that point, talks about how the organization was established to permit ladies to have vocations while staying unhindered by relentless pregnancies. Following this, the chief of the middle, Linda, invites the clients By reporting that people have control over nature, she then starts the visit through the office and guides the guests to the hatching room in this advanced world. The Belly community has contrived a logical approach to making children inside fake eggs called cases. Here she shows the clients the enormous, counterfeit, hard eggshell-like design with a child developing inside it. Besides, the guardians can likewise utilize their telephones or tablets to uncover the developing incipient organism too. Different sound like music and digital recordings. She likewise says that they can pick the sorts of flavors their child benefits from, proposing different choices so the youngster doesn't end up being a fussy eater. A client asks how long the case can capability when disengaged from the base. Accordingly, the chief says it very well may be isolated for as long as 48 hours, which permits the guardians to take the unit when voyaging. Rachel inquires as to whether the child would be able hear the rest of the world like a whiz child can hear in the uterus. The chief answers that they would be able and energizes them to address their youngster in any event when it's inside the case. After the visit, Linda asks Rachel for a store to affirm her interest in the method. That night in their loft, Albie lets his significant other know that he got a notice about an $8,700 store. He inquires as to whether they ought to inform the bank, inquiring as to whether it's a cheat alert. Anyway, Rachel uncovers that she made the installment and that her work would cover it as a piece of her advancement bundle. Confessing all to her better half, she concedes that she had placed their names on the standby rundown of the Belly community, never hoping to hear back from them. Befuddled, Albie communicates his arrangement that she went on the visit. Furthermore, consented to develop their kid inside a unit without illuminating him. Contrite, she apologizes and says that she needs to have a child with him. The two then embrace one another and vow to talk about the matter further to assuage his concerns. She recommends they converse with her companion Alice and her significant other Ben to find out more about the experience. The following night, Ben tells the couple the best way to hold the unit with a tie. Alice discusses how having the choice of growing a child in a case permits a couple to have equivalent kid care liability. When Ben asks when they'll take the visit, Rachel lies and says they don't realize. Then he asks Albie if he has any desire to hold the unit. However, he pleasantly declines. After they return to their condo, the couple have an contention. Albie is as yet careful about the system and communicates his anxiety about the case's plastic material. However, Rachel says the only thing that is important is simply the child believes it's a genuine. Belly outraged. That's what she says on the off chance that he can convey the child in the unit. Very much like Ben, she knows that they could lose their spot at the Belly focus. Assuming they requested additional time that night after 2 or 3 has intercourse, Albie says he adjusted his perspective and thinks they ought to proceed with the unit. He can perceive the amount it makes a difference to his better half and consents to give the interaction an opportunity. The following day, several meets with Linda, who inquires as to whether it means a lot to them that Albie is the child's dad. Confounded, they inquire why that is even an inquiry. Linda clears up that all they need for consider the child is Rachel's ovum and her skin cells, which implies they won't require any DNA from a male giver. Anyway, she focuses out that in the event that they wish to have a child, they will require the Y chromosome from a male giver. Without a second thought, Rachel demands her significant other to be the kid's dad, and they consent to allow nature to choose the orientation of the child. Following this, the couple anxiously watches the course of Rachel's over getting prepared on an immense screen, while Linda describes everything occurring after the fruitful insemination. The chief compliments the anticipating guardians, who appear to be very blissful minutes after the fact. A laborer shows them the Zio inside a cryogenic cylinder. When they return to the condo, the couple gets a call from Rachel's folks. During the call, her dad advises Albie to contemplate selling his property on Shell Island, since they could utilize the cash now that they're expecting a child. Mindful of how her better half feels about the subject, Rachel advises her dad to drop the subject. Later in the brooding room at the Belly Focus, she inquires as to whether she could see their child as she can't open the eggshell's window on her own. The medical attendant makes sense of that. They keep the undeveloped organism in complete dimness until the first heartbeat is identified. Their discussion is interfered with when one of the units blares. The medical caretaker brings up that the case is prepared for conveyance and uncovers that the gadget identifies extraordinary master proteins. Furthermore, chemicals in the amniotic liquid when the child is prepared to emerge into the world. When Rachel requests what the state from due date is, the medical caretaker incidentally says that they can give an assessment as nature actually chooses the best time for the child to come out that evening. Rachel fantasies about having a C-segment and birthing an egg rather than a child, so she goes to her advisor Eliza and uncovers the bizarre dream. The man-made intelligence reminds her that fantasies aren't dependable and logical material, and that their review was spurned in the 20th century. A couple weeks after the fact, the couple pays attention to the child's pulse. Interestingly, at the Belly community here, Linda illuminates them that they could bring the case back home for 2 weeks at a half year of gestation. They open the menu. Weeks after the fact, the couple pays attention to the child's pulse. Interestingly, at the Belly community here, Linda illuminates them that they could bring the unit back home for 2 weeks at a half year of gestation. They open the little survey window and gaze at the creating child. Interestingly, a couple months after the fact, Albie sees the child's room that Rachel adorned and recommends putting a live plant there anyway. The spouse believes it's better in the event that he plans a visualization form rather than a live one. Insulted, he leaves the room while his significant other follows him, yelling that it may be smart to sell the property on Shell Island since they never go there. In any case, Albie contends that this is on the grounds that she never needs to visit to, which she rapidly answers they don't need to, in light of the fact that the city has nature units. Incensed, the spouse demands he will not bring up their youngster with fake vegetation. That night, Albie sees their child's case in the lounge room, and his spouse says she brought it home in light of the fact that it's their home period. She thinks investing energy with it in their condo could do them great. Uncertain how to continue, they cautiously move the unit to their room anyway. While having intercourse, Albie says he can't keep knowing that their youngster is in the room with them. He then conveys it toward the nursery and nearly trips and almost drops at this close to incident. Surprises his significant other spouse. However, he makes sense of that. She'll need to acknowledge that their child will stagger and fall at some point in its life. In the accompanying scene, they take a visit through a tuition-based school claimed and run by Pegasus. Here, a man specifies that his nephew brought into the world in the Belly Center doesn't have dreams, so Linda says it's an incidental effect they're working on, yet guarantees every one of the guardians that it's nothing to stress over, on the grounds that fantasies feel no transformative need for the following couple of weeks. Albie gets the child on his body utilizing a case transporter. He spends the vast majority of his time taking the case everywhere the city while perusing books so anyone might hear, so the child can hear him. One day later, Class AL's supervisor lets him know that they've chosen to gradually scale down the nursery since upkeep costs them a lot of cash. He brings up that they can supplant the genuine plants with Visualizations disturbing the botanist that very evening. Albie gets close to home while watching a narrative about penguins. Out of nowhere, Rachel opens up the capacity of returning the case to the office sooner than anticipated. Astonished, her better half says having it in the house has been perfect and denies the proposition. Yet again that evening Rachel has a bizarre dream. She sees that the case is no more close to her, so she madly looks the room. However, when she remains before the mirror, she sees her pregnant tummy. Scarcely any days after the fact, Albie says he got a book from his mom about connection treatment, which is a conviction that spending time with a child assists the youngster with creating compassion. Rachel contends that the whole reason behind having a case child is separation from the course of pregnancy. In reaction, he says that recognizing various philosophies is a solid practice. Seconds after the fact, his significant other opens up about how she isn't adapting great working. Furthermore, asks that they address the computer-based intelligence advisor Eliza during the treatment meeting. Rachel tells the simulated intelligence they're experiencing issues changing in light of the fact that everything appears to spin around the unit. She adds that her significant other is bit by bit holding with the youngster while she isn't making a similar progress. On the other hand, her better half thinks she needs more alone time with the child. However, she quickly answers that perhaps she isn't prepared to be a mother yet. The treatment meeting closes when Eliza asks to be associated with the case straightforwardly to take readings about the developing child. In the following couple of days, Rachel conveys the case around on a transporter. Anyway, she feels reluctant about what individuals think when they see her in open. One day she carries the unit to a work meeting at Pegasus. After the gathering is finished, Alice cautions her that HR probably won't like her carrying the case to work and that individuals could mark her as a diverted mother. She then, at that point, takes Rachel to a little room in the workplace where the others place their cases while at work. That evening, when Rachel's shift is over, she understands that she's late for a studio at the Belly community. She briskly makes her way to the studio where her spouse is all around hanging tight for her. A while later, several spots their case back in the brooding room, and Rachel says she wants to spend more time with it. For the following couple of days, the several feels progressively desolate due to the case's non-attendance. Rachel proceeds fantasizing holding a child while strolling on an ocean side. When she awakens the following day, she heads to the condo nursery, takes a plant and places it in the nursery. Anyway, things start to get ugly for Rachel at her work. The HR chief asks about her diminished efficiency at work and inquires as to whether she's enduring intellectually. Rachel denies this unobtrusive allegation of having despondency and brushes away the worry. Before long, a while later, several meets with Linda, who asks them their favored date for the initiated birth. Shocked by this question, they can't help thinking about for what reason is the inquiry of incited birth being posed. So before long, accordingly, the chief makes sense of that the organization's strategy has changed as the cases are popular, which implies they should be initiated at 39 weeks. When Rachel inquires as to whether they can keep the pot at home until it's prepared for birth, Linda advises them that doing so is taboo according to the fine print of the marked contract as 2 or 3 leaves the building. Albie advises his significant other to hang tight for him outside while he gets back to the nursery and takes their case that evening. Subsequent to waking from a fantasy where she brings a child back home from a super store, Rachel eagerly lets her significant other know that they ought to go to Shell Island and have the child there. At the point when Albie inquires as to why she altered her perspective, she says she doesn't need their kids. First minutes to be in the Belly community. Following this, Albie addresses Linda and makes sense of that his significant other is in a holding stage with the child anyway. The chief advises him that the unit ought to have remained in the office in the first place. Albie contends that the child is under their ward, yet Linda reminds him that the unit is the Belly community's property. Exasperated, he concedes that what's more, his better half are thinking about a home birth. Linda uncovers they'll require a self-created birth code to open the vessel, and she exhorts against their plan anyway. 2 or 3 pushes through with their choice to make a beeline for Shell Island for the last long periods of development. They invest energy with their unit in the serene lodge close to the ocean side. One evening, Rachel sees that the case's base isn't turning on. Albie understands that the Belly center absolute requirement from a distance separated their admittance to the office, so to quiet his stressed spouse, he advises her that the unit can remain alive for 48 hours even subsequent to being disengaged from the office. He then adds that they should believe that the child is prepared for birth before the 48 hours are over. Luckily, the following day the unit alarms them that the child is prepared to emerge to the world. Rachel attempts to enter the child origination date as the birth code, however, it doesn't work. Overreacted, Albie says he'll tear the gadget open with mechanical apparatuses. He eliminates the screw top, yet the opening is still as well little for the baby, so he pries the 2 parts open with sheer power. Rachel then envelopes their youngster with a towel, and the 2 or 3 gazes affectionately at their posterity. In the last scene of the film, Rachel packs the vacant unit in a box and bicycles to town. There she rubs it off at the mail center. Prior to heading back to their lodge, she rests straightaway to her kid and spouse calmly